So today I wanted to talk a little bit about remote connectivity with the Starlink beta. Now, this is just using a reverse VPN, so there's no magic here. This is one of several ways that you can do this. The reason this came about is a friend was asking me about remote connectivity. He's wanting to use it for various applications where he would require remote connectivity, and then another question came up either on one of the videos or in a comment on a blog post, I believe, that somebody was asking about port forwarding. So I did ask Starlink about this, and they said, it's on the roadmap, but it's not here yet. Uh, and so, of course, I wanted to find a workaround. Now, take it for what it's worth. This may or may not be more secure. I'm doing this with WireGuard. I believe this is probably a little more secure than port forwarding. I do not like port forwarding if I can help it, so this is a great way to get around that. It does come with some limitations. Again, I am using WireGuard and Linux for this. Your mileage may vary. You can use other VPNs. This just happens to be my personal preference. So let's go and jump in. So here's a quick agenda. We're going to talk about why does it matter. I'll walk you through a visual design with my exceptional uh, PowerPoint skills. We'll do a quick video walkthrough of how this works, and then we'll come back and just kind of summarize what we did. So why this matter? So for myself, I have a media server at home where I have some over-the-air recorded television shows, so a DVR essentially, and I also have some movies and some DVDs that I've ripped that from my personal library, and I've put those into digital format. So I want to be able to access those remotely. I also like to be able to monitor my home remotely. So, if I don't happen to be there, also for, as I've talked about before with my vacation rental, I do have some automation there. So I want to be able to monitor that remotely and also, just make sure everything is working correctly. So I do need to be able to access the local network for that. Um, Under normal circumstances, I do tend to travel for work a bit. So I like to be able to, support my family while I'm gone. I do have family members that, either work from home or, are doing school from home at the current time and potentially for the foreseeable future. So I always like to make sure that I can jump on and help them remotely without having to, leverage a cloud-based solution or a third-party solution. And then finally, for demonstration purposes, I do like to be able to access my lab remotely. And I may have things in multiple locations. So wherever that may happen to be, I need to be able to access it. In my case, I will keep some lab things in my vacation rental as well as at my primary residence, just so I can show kind of that cloud-like model for my job, but also just because I enjoy doing that. So let's go ahead and jump into kind of a brief diagram. And so on the left side, you'll see, the production network, and that's my primary residence. That's where, my Unified Dream Machine Pro is. I have a WireGuard VPN server running there on a virtual machine, and that's worked well for me. So I typically will connect into that from my laptop through the internet. On the Starlink test network side, so these are both in the same physical location, although in the future I anticipate this being separate network, physically different locations. The networks are physically separated and connected only through the internet currently. And so on the right side, you'll also notice I have what I refer to as a jump host. Now, this is a jump host, bastion server, whatever you want to call it. This is essentially the one place that I can log into. Now, because I cannot do port forwarding, because I have no way in here, I can't actually run a VPN. So there's no way into that jump host to get into behind the Starlink network. So what I've done in this diagram is the jump host actually connects via VPN to the other network through the internet. So I'm using the WireGuard configuration. In this case, I'm using a Ubuntu 20.04 Mate desktop as my jump host. Generally, I will just use a server, a Ubuntu server, because I do not necessarily need the desktop, but in this case, it's easier for demonstration. So that jump host is going to connect via VPN into my production network. I'm then going to be able to access the Starlink network via the VPN interface on that jump host. So then I can access the Starlink, network, whether it be the Starlink, to look at their stats, their on their router, or if that's to access other things that I happen to have there. So with that being said, very simple in concept. So let's go ahead and move into the lab environment. I've set up a Ubuntu 2004 virtual machine running on vSphere, and it also works on KVM, bare metal. Everything should be the same. I've tested a couple different permutations of that, but in this case, I run most of my lab and production environment on vSphere. So I'm going to go ahead and install WireGuard. So we'll pull up a terminal window and sudo apt install WireGuard. Put in my password. It's going to ask me, do I want to do it? It's also going to suggest OpenResolve, which we will do that next. So we're going to go ahead and let that install. Then we'll do a sudo apt install OpenResolve. And if you want to get more details on why, there's some issues that takes care of, but that is outside the scope of this. So for purposes of this demonstration, I've gone ahead and created my WireGuard configuration. I'm not going to walk you through that. There's a lot of other great videos on that, but I am going to go ahead and copy. So I'm going to copy that from my home server. So I've actually, for the purposes of this demo, opened up SSH to my home lab. Okay, so you notice I skipped a little bit there because I needed to make sure that I got the path correct. So I'm basically just pulling this configuration file from my home lab. I'm going to put it in the current directory for a moment, and the reason being is it's permissioned as to where it's going to go. Okay, so now I have the file, so I'm going to go ahead and move that. So we'll do a sudo move that the configuration file to /etc/wireguard. And then I'm actually going to change the name of that to wg0.conf. And so now I should be able to ideally connect to my VPN. So first of all, let's do a clear screen. Okay, so let's just take a look at what our IP address is. So I know that this is correct because that is what Starlink is currently handing out as a 192.168 address. So the 155 tells me that I'm on Starlink. So what I will do is wg-quick up wg0 to bring up the IP interface. To bring up the WireGuard interface. So now I can run an IPA. So you'll notice I've now added a new interface, which is WG0 or WireGuard 0. This is the correct IP range for that. This is the IP address that my server gave it. So now I should be able to ping, and that I know is one of the IP addresses on my production home network. And so I know that the VPN is up. So now that I know that the VPN is up, I'm going to go ahead and install OpenSSH, or I'm going to install SSH server here. This will take just a minute. And so what I'm going to do now that this is done, so we'll go ahead and clear screen. I'm going to go ahead and go back to my laptop, which is connected to the same VPN server. And I am going to SSH to that IP, which is the VPN interface. Yes, that's fine. And so I can confirm this by saying IPA, which tells me again, if you remember, 192.168.155 was the address, also this one. And you'll notice my username at Starlink demo01. So I'm now actually inside the Starlink network. So there's various things I can do with this. I could also publish I could publish various ports over SSH this way. If I needed to get in, I could, have a web server that runs on my demo server, or I'm sorry, on my Starlink jump host, or I could just come in here if I wanted to, through VNC, depending on what I'm trying to accomplish. So hopefully this makes sense. Let's go ahead and go back to our presentation. Now that we've shown this, let's go ahead and kind of summarize what we did. So we installed Linux. We installed the WireGuard client on that Linux jump server. Could be a Windows server for that matter. Could be Mac, depending on what you're using. Raspberry Pis work great for this. We then connected our jump host to the WireGuard VPN. We connected our laptop to the WireGuard VPN, and then we were able to access the Starlink network remotely through the jump server. Now, this is going to be a series, so in the next video, what I'm going to show is some of the performance metrics that I've been pulling and how I accomplish that using, putting that on a jump server so that I'm able to actually access that remotely through the VPN. So again, this is not required to use WireGuard. This is not necessarily specific to Starlink. This is just a handy way for those of us using Starlink to do further testing and to enable remote access if we have this opportunity. If you don't have the lab infrastructure to set something like this up, you can easily set up a very small host on Google Cloud Platform, Amazon Web Services, something of that nature. You can look at other options. Um, DigitalOcean has some great opportunities there as well. So I'm not affiliated with any of these. I just happen to know that they work. But in my case, since I have the infrastructure to do this, this is how I've chosen to set it up. So again, thanks for watching. If you would hit subscribe and thumbs up, it does help other people find this content. I'm just doing this because I think it's useful and helpful, uh, and hopefully it will help other people. So thank you, and let me know if you have any comments or thoughts or other things you'd like me to demonstrate.